your hearts, young men, let nothing fright you. Be of a gallant mind, let that delight you. Let not your courage fail till after trial, nor let your fancy move at the first denial. One day a gallant youth did cross the ocean to free America from her invasion. He landed at Quebec with all his party, the city to attack, both brave and hearty. Brave Wolfe drew up his men in form most pretty on the plains of Abraham before the city. There just before the town, the French did meet them. With double numbers they resolved to beat them. Each man then took his post at their retire. So then these numerous hosts began to fire. The cannon on each side did roar like thunder, and youths in all their pride were torn asunder. The drums did loudly beat, colors were flying, the purple gore did stream, and the men lay dying when shot.
For you, sir.
Well, sexually, nothing. You see, you're a woman, and I, being gay, am attracted only to men.
Are you gonna order something?
Oh, I get it. The fruitcake is holding up the line.
No, it's not that, sir. I just have to get my...
No biggie. You're just frightened of something you don't understand. Now, let's see. I think the combo meal would satisfy a homosexual's taste buds, and I am a homosexual, so I'll have that.
What combo meal for the homosexual man?
This is great. Attention, please. Attention. I am gay. Repeat, I am very gay. Just go about your business normally, as heterosexuals.
Okay, sir, that'll be $5.67, please.
Wow. It's a good thing gay men work. Thank you, on behalf of all homosexuals.
Happy Pride Month. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. We're glad and thankful to have you here. We appreciate you very much for joining us. Don't forget to click that like button. Well, Paris burned last weekend. Old gay Paris. PSG won the Champions League for the second year in a row. And for the second year in a row, the Champs-Elysees looked like a war zone. 780 people were arrested. 57 cops were injured. 260 cars were set on fire. Rioters tried to storm a police station in one of the richest neighborhoods in the country. France had to deploy 22,000 police before the kickoff because they did the math from last year and decided they needed an army to host a soccer celebration, and the army showed up, but the fire was big anyway. I'm sure that sometime this week, Emmanuel Macron is going to stand in front of a camera and say, oh, this is unacceptable. A committee will form, a report is going to be written, and then they'll file that with a report from 2025 and 2023 and the one from 2005. And they're going to put it in a filing cabinet somewhere where Paris is not on fire. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, up here, Pew Research is sitting on a staggering number that nobody in the polite media is going to want to read out loud. 56.3%. So that is the mental illness diagnosis rate among white liberal women ages 18 to 29. More than half mentally ill. Yeah. So their conservative peers, the ladies on the conservative side, they only come in at 27%. The 2024 American Family Survey found that only 12% of young liberal women are completely satisfied with their lives. Conservative women, 37%, 3 times. And before anyone reaches for the Instagram excuse or social media or whatever, or the economy or whatever this week's structural explanation is, researchers controlled in this study for age, income, education, and race, but the gap didn't move. So the ideology is doing this on its own. And so these are 2 stories that look different on their surface. One of them, Paris is burning. Another one is an American demographic study, but they both have the same author. They're both what happens when a civilization decides that telling people the truth is less important than making them feel validated in a lie. So when you tell a generation of young women that marriage is oppression and faith is ignorance and the family is a patriarchal trap, and then you hand them Instagram and you call it and therapy and you call this liberation, well, what we get is a 56% mental illness diagnosis rate. And when you tell a French city for 30 years that their immigration policy is working, that the banlieues are a poverty problem and not a civilizational problem, and that these riots are about football or about police brutality or anything except the one thing that they're actually about, then you produce 2 people dead and 260 burning cars on a Tuesday night in June, while the president is tweeting congratulations to his brothers. So the mechanism that produces these 2 situations is identical. The lie that they tell is always, it's that they're compassionate. The lie always flatters the person who is telling it, and the lie always runs downhill to the people who never got a vote in the policy. So today we're going to talk about both. And we're going to talk about what the data on liberal women actually says and why the left can't afford to fix it because it would dismantle their entire project. We're going to talk about Paris and what happened last weekend and what's been happening since 2005 and why the word remigration went from unsayable to now federal agency language in 5 years. And we've got a couple of guests this morning, Austin Padgett, who's going to explain why the Libertarian Party, the movement that I came from and still care about, has spent the last several years collapsing into Israel obsession that has eaten everything else that the movement used to stand for. So 3 stories, 1 diagnosis, a civilization that's decided the truth is too expensive, and now we're paying for that decision. I'm Austin Peterson. This is Wake Up America. We're also going to have John Miltimore on the show today. We're going to talk about DEI and Helen of Troy. Calling her Helen of Congo these days. So make sure that you click the like button and click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you be a regular guest on this show. You can join us every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. That's the Wake Up America show schedule, and we're sticking to it. Don't forget, too, you can always unlock bonus content. Looks like Byron Norris is already getting that started this morning. Good morning, Byron. Thank you for the $5. That's $5 towards the $100 goal. If we raise $100 on today's show, either in Rumble Rants or in purchases made at forlibertyshop.com, then you'll unlock today's mini documentary, which I know you all enjoy. So if you'd like to watch that instead of commercials when we go to our breaks, then keep those Rumble Rants flowing or head on over to forlibertyshop.com. Good morning, V-Bell. It's nice to see you. I always love seeing new faces. So make sure that you guys are participating and visiting the Grift Shop, and let's get this show on the road.
10 years ago, you wrote, conservative women seem to be particularly blissful. About 40% say they're very happy. That makes them slightly happier than conservative men and significantly happier than liberal women.
Yeah.
The unhappiest of all are liberal men. Only about a fifth consider themselves very happy.
That was true 10 years ago. Liberal women have overtaken liberal men as the unhappiest group. You find that particularly young women, very interesting new data show that white liberal women under 30 have almost a 6 in 10 chance of having been diagnosed with a mental illness in America today. It's a really big problem. And there's lots of speculation about what that has to do with politics, what it has to do with race, what it has to do with age, et cetera, et cetera. But what you find is that this is a group that's really, really struggling. And it's a pity because it's not good for them. It's not good for society. And that's what we see. So I don't think that being a political conservative is a panacea for being a happy person, but we see disproportionately these happiness and unhappiness effects in different parts of the population for sure.
We used to have a joke. I think I heard it in college. Somebody said, did you know that 50% of women are struggling with some form of mental illness? And people are like, oh my God, what? I'd never heard. Oh, can you believe this? Yeah, that means that 50% are walking around undiagnosed. Just kidding, ladies. But now there's some data. So the left has spent the last 50 years telling young women that marriage is a trap, that faith was ignorance, and that the family was a control mechanism with good landscaping. And they packaged all of that as female liberation. And then they ran this through every university, every network drama, every HR training module, every movie, every teen magazine. I mean, the left had the culture. They had the long march through the institutions, the money. They had 50 years of uncontested airtime on television. And now we have the receipts to see the results of that project. Now, this is from Pew Research, which is not Breitbart. It's not some guy with a podcast. This is Pew Research, found that white liberal women ages 18 to 29 are being diagnosed with mental health conditions at a rate of 56.3%. So more than 50% of female white liberals are mentally ill. Now, their moderate peers come in at 28.4%. Their conservative peers, below that, 27.3%. So the women who rejected this whole leftist feminist liberation package are being diagnosed with mental illness at less than half the rate of women who bought into this package. Right, the 2024 American Family Survey found that only 12% of young liberal women report being happy or even satisfied with their lives. Conservative women, 37%, so 3 times as happy. And the researchers controlled in this study for age, income, education, and race, and the gap didn't move, okay? So the ideology is doing this independently. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter if you've got 3 degrees, you're a doctor, you've got a bachelor's degree. Over 50% walking around mentally ill, okay? So 50 years of feminist theory, of the long march through the institutions, of indoctrination, of cultural domination, 50 years of what they call dismantling the patriarchy. And the most measurable product of this is that they are now the most miserable demographic in the country. I mean, I genuinely want someone at the New York Times to write an explainer on how that is Austin Peterson, the manosphere podcaster's fault. That's what they would say, is that we're mentally ill and it's your fault. You've had no control over the culture over the last 50 years. So there's a piece of this story that the left actually wants to talk about because it lets them change the subject, and that is social media. Because a lot of people, if you were to bring this up in casual conversation with your boys or your family or whatever on Friday night, then of course a lot of people are going to say, well, it's because they're doom scrolling on their phones. It's because they're on social media and they've been rewired ever since they were adolescents. Girlhood starting around 2012 has produced the mental health collapse we're now measuring. And it is true that social media is doing damage. But the idea that it is behind this entirely, bit of a stretch. Now, the suicide rate for girls was up about, oh my God, this number is insane, 167% from 2010 to 2020, 167% suicide increase over 10 years. So the data on heavy social media use and depression in girls is real to an extent, and it is alarming, but it's not the whole picture. So moving from 0 to 5 hours of daily use on social media is associated with a tripling of depression rates in girls. Jonathan Haidt's research is really important on this, and it's serious. But the left is using this as an escape hatch and trying to pin all of the blame on this one issue, right? If the problem is Instagram, then the problem is not the ideology, right? It's all Mark Zuckerberg, right? And then we can all agree that Mark Zuckerberg is bad, and then we can move on without examining what leftist feminism has actually produced. But the Pew data controls for all of that, including social media. So the mental health gap between liberal and conservative women persists after you account for every demographic factor that researchers could test. So both things can be true at once. Social media is poisonous and the ideology is poisonous, but they're not separate poisons. The left built a worldview that trained young women to find their identity and community online, to seek validation from strangers, and to treat their emotional life as public content. And then they handed them Instagram. And Jonathan Haidt here has kind of identified the accelerant, but the left are the ones who started the fire on this one. So what is the media falling back on? So on the rare occasion that the media will actually engage with the Pew data directly, they'll ask whether unhappy people might just naturally drift towards left-wing politics, as if the ideology is just an innocent bystander who happened to be standing there when the ambulance arrived. Now, the Institute for Family Studies has actually put that question to bed. So they found two variables that predict female happiness more powerfully than anything else in the data. Take a guess. What do you think it could be? What do you think it is? What are the two things that predict that women will be happier? Marriage and church attendance. So not income, right? It's not money. It's not money that's the problem. Not education, right? More education didn't help, right? Not their zip code, right? Not the location, the place of your birth. It was marriage and church. So the left didn't stumble into attacking both of those things. I mean, they wrote the dissertations, they built their curriculums, and designed 4-year programs specifically engineered to make young women suspicious of the exact structures that the data says would have kept them stable. Now, there's something else that's happening that you're not going to see on CNN today. They're never going to talk about this. But progressive spaces have turned mental illness into a form of social currency. For those of us on the right, I think we know this. If you've read Abigail Schreier's books, a diagnosis gets you community. I mean, you even see this sometimes on the right, where this virtue signaling for their whatever their disability is gets them standing, right? Like, oh, I'm black. I'm Candace Owens. I'm disabled. I'm mentally ill. Millions of views. So it gets you moral standing in a movement that ranks suffering like it's a competitive sport. And then it treats a therapy intake like it's a college application, right? The diagnosis economy on the left is enormous. And it's not just financially enormous, so that is a big deal. The therapy industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine that requires an endless supply of patients who never fully recover. An undiagnosed conservative woman in a stable marriage is totally invisible in progressive spaces. You will not find an undiagnosed conservative woman in these spaces. A liberal woman with 3 diagnoses and a TikTok series about her trauma, that's a community leader. She's going to get a Netflix special. Right? The left didn't fail to prevent this crisis. They built the incentive structures that manufactured this crisis. They staffed it with licensed professionals, and then they billed the insurance company while calling it care. When you see advertisements for these mental health websites, and you're seeing them on television, you're seeing them on social media, you're seeing them, whenever you're scrolling, if you see advertisements, That just goes to show that these companies have millions of dollars to spend on advertising alone, which means that there is a financial incentive to diagnose people, to get them into this system, to lift them up. And there's a whole ecosystem that has been created here to create mental illness as a product. Now, conservative women, our ladies like Misha Swisky over there, they're doing the things that the left told them would ruin their lives, and they're 3 times happier than liberal women for it. They're married, they're in church, they're raising children, they're embedded in communities where people have actual obligations to them, so they're responsible for people. They don't have followers online. They don't have a Discord server. They don't have people who will physically, what they have is they have people who are going to show up if things go wrong in their life, right? And no government program has produced that, right? No therapy app is going to produce that. There is no app that's going to produce a community that somebody's going to show up online the way that they do in real life for conservative women, right? They've built, because they are part of institutions where actual people contribute to their positive mental health and their positive self-image. Like the left has launched every version of both, and then of these programs. They've launched every version of this, and the numbers are, I mean, Pew Research polls. You guys gotta have to read this. I'll drop the link in the chat. The thing that gets under progressive skin when you talk about that is that these women chose this, right? It wasn't forced upon them. Right, the whole package, the leftist feminist liberation package, it was fully available. And for conservative women, they saw it, they passed on it, and now they're happy. A woman building her life around a husband and a congregation is a walking refutation of the last 50 years of feminist theory. And the numbers are out, and it shows that conservative women are 3 times more likely to report complete satisfaction with their lives than the woman who spent 4 years in a women's study program learning why that contentment was false consciousness. So what really drives the contempt, and it is contempt, it's not concern, is that the conservative woman's happiness is illegitimate in the framework. So they don't accept that she's happy. They think that she is unhappy. They look at her, because these progressives live in a bubble. They see the conservative woman in church with her family, and they see that as oppression, and they think that she's not actually happy. But it's not true. See, the leftist progressive ideology can't accept that the structures that they dismantled, or that they've been trying to dismantle, were actually working. So instead of updating their BS theories, they sort of pathologize the evidence. They call the conservative woman repressed, or they call her complicit in her own slavery. And they'll write think pieces about her internalized misogyny. So the data calls her happy, though. So leftism as an operating system requires women to be unhappy in order to stay politically relevant and, of course, to feed the BetterHelp machine. A stable woman in a good marriage with a community she trusts has no use for this grievance machine and no reason to show up for the next election cycle terrified as hell and ready to vote against the orange man bad. Right? The conservative woman is the left's worst nightmare, but she also happens to be the norm in conservative spheres. More women on the right are just happier. And here's the thing. The woman who believes that she controls her own fate is happier than the woman who believes that the patriarchy does. This is classic external locus of control. We've talked about this concept on this show quite frequently. When you believe that you are in control of your own life, when you believe that you are responsible for your own decisions, that means that you have a high internal locus of control. When it's other forces that are responsible for your life, whether it's, the patriarchy, the Illuminati, the Jews, right? Everybody else is responsible for your life than yourself. You're just not as happy. And you see this across the whole entire progressive project, right? So the woman who believes that she controls her own fate is happier than the woman who does not, right? Not because life is fair, because life isn't fair and life will never be fair. But the belief itself that you control your life actually shapes the outcome. And there is actually a clinical term for the belief that forces you outside of right. They do use the locus of control concept quite frequently. And the external locus of control, right? This is directly correlated with depression, anxiety, and learned helplessness. And Austin Padgett, and if you think I'm just beating up on the women right now, Austin Padgett and I at 8:30 are going to talk about the learned helplessness of the liberty movement surrounding the Juminatis, as Drew Van Runkle has called it. Good morning, Drew. How you doing, bud? It's always the Juminati. Misha Swisky says, I think dem men are even crazier and creepier. Probably true, and it's good to see you. What's up, InJam? How's everybody doing today? You look kind of cute. Nice to see everybody there. Don't forget to click that like button. So the left doesn't just attract people with this mindset, with depression, anxiety, and helplessness. They actually teach it in accredited programs funded by federal student loans, but they call this critical thinking or critical theory. The girl at 23 who cannot get out of bed paid 60 grand for a degree that gave her a worldview that put her there. She was told that her unhappiness had an external cause. You're unhappy not because of the poor decisions that you've made. You're happy because the patriarchy, right? This is extremely common. This isn't just something that infects the left. This is a human quality. It's just that it's magnified on the left. Right? The liberal woman was told that the system did it to her. It's not your fault you're mentally ill. It's the system that's at fault. Right? And the left didn't truly empower her. They didn't give her a lever to pull, because if you were given a lever to pull, that would mean that you have to accept that you have agency. And if you accept that you have agency, that means you're out of the movement. And the movement wants to keep you. Right? It validates your diagnosis. It celebrates your grievance, and then it schedules it for the next week rally, and never once suggests that maybe a husband and a church or a life built on something permanent might do more for her mental health than another year of therapy and another election cycle of righteous anger. So the 56% mental illness diagnosis rate, that's not just like a tragedy that just happened to befall the left's ideas. It is the proof of concept. The left needs unhappy women the way that any industry needs a customer base that never gets well, because you solve the problem, you lose the constituency. Now, 50 years into this concept, and the constituency is enormous, the women who are inside it are miserable, and the happiest women in America, according to this Pew Research poll, chose the life spent. They chose a life they spent half a century trying to be talked out of, and they're the happiest women in the United States. And that's the whole verdict right there. Andy Opperman with the wisdom this morning says, our expectation of happiness is a societal problem. Happiness is only ever temporary. Satisfaction is sustainable. I don't get no satisfaction. What's up, BB Chip? Nice to see you guys. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Guys, America's turning 250 years old, and I feel as if people just aren't being patriotic enough. I don't know. When you go to the corporate slop stores and they give you your corporate slop, do you ever look at the stuff that they have in the seasonal holiday section and think, gosh, this stuff is crap. They could do so much better. Well, guess what? We did it so much better. If you guys have never visited forlibertyshop.com, today's the best day to do it, because the 250th anniversary collection is, in my opinion, it's the best collection of 250th anniversary merch that you're going to find in the Western world. Head to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Check out all of our incredible merch. I'm really excited about my white version. I've got this is going to be my second one of these polos that I have. But if you head to forlibertyshop.com and you scroll down, you'll see our 250th anniversary collection. The embroidered American flag polo shirt has been a huge hit at the shop. If you go to forlibertyshop.com, you'll find it on the front page. I got the black one for myself, but that was when I was like 20 pounds heavier, because I wanted to make sure that, like, you know, my disgusting nipples weren't poking out. So I got the black one initially, but since then I've lost about 20 pounds this year. No, I'm not on Ozempic or Mounjaro, but I've done it the old-fashioned way. But if you head to forlibertyshop.com, I think that the white one, Drew Van Runkle has got the white one. There's a nice picture of him that he posted on it. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com this morning. Get yourself a beautiful polo. We've also got the 250th anniversary double-sided American flag. The new shirt, America 76, has kind of got like that retro G.I. Joe style vibe over there. Check that one out. It's nice. Drew Van Runkle asking the real questions over there says, do you want to support the trillionaire Walton family, or do you want a small but growing family? Exactly. Thank you, Drew. So if you love liberty, if you love America, then head on over to forlibertyshop.com this morning, guys, and get yourself some sweet gear. We've got Betsy Ross flip-flops, the Boston Tea Party mug, the High IQ hat for everybody who wants to flex their freedom on their forehead. There's no sad airport gift shop energy. No, my uncle bought this at a gas station in Branson, guys. Real designs for real people who know America's birthday is a big deal. So go to forlibertyshop.com. Check out the 250th anniversary collection today. Paris is burning. And it's time for us to talk about the R word, hard R, remigration. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the death of the West if we don't do something. This is the Wake Up America show. Head on over to the Grift Shop at forlibertyshop.com during the commercial break. Unlock that bonus content. Then you get to watch the mini documentary instead of these commercials. This is the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. "'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again."
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
George Washington spent years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
That was Paris last weekend. Last weekend, Paris Saint-Germain won the UEFA Champions League for the second consecutive year. They beat Arsenal on penalties in Budapest, and then Paris burned for the second consecutive year. 780 people were arrested last weekend. 57 police officers were injured. 260 vehicles were set on fire. Rioters attempted to storm a police station in the 8th arrondissement, which is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the entire country. The ring road around the city was blockaded. Restaurants and bakeries near the stadium were looted and damaged. France had deployed 22,000 police officers before the kickoff, 8,000 of them in Paris alone, because they knew exactly what was coming. They knew because in 2025, which was the first time that PSG won the Champions League, 2 people died, 192 people got injured, 559 were arrested, and 264 vehicles burned then. The government, put out a statement saying is unacceptable. But then they planned for the next one. They staffed up. They put 8,000 officers in the streets. But the 2026 version of this was worse. More people arrested, more officers down. France doubled down on the response, and the fire got bigger anyway. Now, at some point, the word for this is not a policing failure. Okay, the word for this is a civilization that has not told itself the truth in 30 years, and they're now paying installments on the debt every time that somebody wins a soccer game in their country. Now, France has been here before, and not just last year. So if you actually go back to 2005, they had 3 weeks of riots in the banlieue, which is the housing projects ringing Paris, where the government parked generations of North African immigrants, and they called that integration. Clichy-sous-Bois, Aulnay-sous-Bois, across the Saint-Denis region and beyond, 3 weeks, thousands of vehicles burned. The army effectively deployed on French soil, and the government's response back then in 2005 was that they formed committees, they promised investments in the banlieue. But here's the detail that I think should end this debate. I'll speak a little French. A French government study found that older brothers and family members of significant numbers of people rioting in 2023 had also rioted in 2005. So 20 years later, the same families, the same streets, burning the same fires. So the French spent 2 decades and billions of euros on committees and urban renewal programs in these banlieues, and social investment to try and stop this. And what they produced was a second generation that riots in the same neighborhoods that their fathers burned. Then came Nahel Merzouk in 2023. This was a police shooting, and then they burned the suburbs again. And then, of course, the PSG championship happened in 2025, now 2026. 4 major riot events in 21 years. Each one generated a commission from the government. Each commission generated a report, and then each report filed itself away while the next generation grows up in the same unassimilated parallel society that the last commission failed to address. So the French government has not been ignoring the problem. They've been solving the wrong problem on repeat for 20 years. Now, the French political class is going to spend this week doing what they always do after the fires go out. Macron is going to go up. He's going to say, this is unacceptable. This is disgusting. The interior minister is going to describe what he saw, and then he's going to get accused of racism for describing exactly what he saw. A committee is going to be formed, and the left is going to locate the real problem, which, of course, is always the people who are saying the obvious thing out loud. Eric Zemmour said it after the 2025 riots, and he was right. This has nothing to do with football, because whether they win or lose, the result is always exactly the same. They do the same thing no matter what the outcome is. This is, so they loot, they burn, right? And they destroy. Look at this. This is 1998 on the top, 2026 there on the bottom. Now, what happened? A lot has changed. Now, Tommy Robinson has called for remigration, and the establishment, of course, says that he wants to engage in ethnic cleansing because that's what they always reach for whenever the argument is lost. Marine Le Pen, she wrote on X this last weekend that only in France does a football victory produce riots. Le Pen's party is now the largest in the French National Assembly. The country has already moved. So the party that spent 30 years being called fascists for saying the obvious thing is now the biggest party in the country. And because Paris has, people are tired of watching Paris burn. And the obvious thing is just kept being obvious. The French government is effectively governing against the political will of its own population on the single issue that population cares about the most. And this isn't a sustainable arrangement. And the fire, every time that the soccer team wins, is one of the ways that this shows itself. Now, we're going to talk about a word that the left does not want us using, and a lot of libertarians don't want us using, which means it's probably good. Whenever the left and the libertarians are agreeing, it's probably a good thing or a bad thing for conservatives. Well, while Paris was burning this last weekend, Martin Sellner was in Porto launching the Institute for Remigration. This is Europe's first dedicated think tank that's built around reversing mass migration. So the left's move on this word is always the same. Of course, they're going to invoke the 1930s. They're going to call it ethnic cleansing because they want to shut this conversation down before anyone can notice that the argument is actually quite simple. A nation is a people. It's a culture. It's a shared set of values and laws and loyalties. Mass immigration without assimilation doesn't produce diversity. What it does is it produces parallel societies that have no shared stake in the country's future and no common framework for resolving a conflict when it arrives. Paris, and this isn't a theory, right? Paris has been demonstrating this since 2005. This is reality. Austria's Freedom Party is calling for an EU remigration commissioner. They even put this in their platform, and they won. DHS posted remigrate on X last week. The State Department floated an office of remigration. Stephen Miller used the word. Trump used the word. The first remigration summit in Italy last year drew hundreds of politicians and activists across Europe and North America. But so what was unsayable 5 years ago is now federal agency language and think tank material. Not because the people who are saying it suddenly got more extreme, but because Paris kept making this argument for them year after year on the same streets with the same fire. Now, the counterexample is sitting there, is unavoidable if you want to look at this. Viktor Orban, who governed Hungary for over a decade, on the explicit premise that the nation has a right to determine who belongs to it. He built fences, he built borders, They called him a fascist. And he told the EU to collect their fines and send them to an address he didn't provide. And he says this in pretty plain language that Hungary would not solve a birth rate problem by importing millions from cultures that had no intention of becoming Hungarian. And of course, the European press calls him a fascist, right? The EU fines him. Trump met with him at the White House in October and said Europe needed to not just stop the flow, but reverse the flow. And Budapest did not burn last weekend. Budapest has not burned. There's no Hungarian version of the Champs-Élysées getting looted because a sports team won a trophy. Warsaw didn't burn. Prague did not burn. Like the cities that declined the immigration policies that France accepted are not having this conversation right now. Right? The French establishment looked at the Orban model and called it dangerous. The French people gave the National Rally their largest vote share in the party's history. So those two things, Hungary and France, they're happening at the same time. Right? The population has been watching the same fires that are burning the city of Paris, and the government keeps explaining it away, and the French people are done accepting the explanation. The politicians, they're still trying to run the commissions from last time, but the people of France are starting to wake up, and that is why you're seeing the rise of many of these populist parties. For 2 consecutive years in Paris, the same city, the same trigger, France deployed more police the second time, and what do they get? They got more arrests, more injuries, rioters taking a police station. Right? So apparently adding resources to the wrong diagnosis does not produce a better outcome. It just produces a more expensive version of the same failure. So it's not a policing problem. Right? The problem is that there's no shared language, there's no shared law, and there's no shared loyalty. So these are the operating conditions of every civilization that's ever held together under pressure. When you bring millions of people into a country and then decline to require that they acquire that loyalty, that culture, those laws, you're not building a diverse society. You're building 2 societies inside the same borders. And then the invoice for that decision gets paid by people who live in these working class neighborhoods, while the architects of the policy, they live in the arrondissement where nothing burns. Right? The shop owner with a looted storefront this morning did not design French immigration policy. The 57 officers who took projectiles last weekend didn't vote for this. Right? The 2 people who died when PSG won last year didn't ask to be the cost of someone else's ideology. They just paid the bill. Well, the Institute for Remigration opened in Porto last night. AfD is in government in Germany. Le Pen's party runs the assembly in France now. DHS here in the United States, they now have the word in official posts. Remigration. The question that France has left is not whether the policy failed, because Paris answered that in 2005. They answered in 2025, and they answered again this last weekend. The question is whether anybody with the power to change it will decide that 2 consecutive years of burning cities is enough proof, or whether they're going to wait for the 3rd year of burning cities before they decide it's time for remigration. Now, let's bring this home, guys. Let's bring this home. Because I know some libertarian is going to pull up the Cato Institute study and they're going to say, well, actually, illegal immigrants commit less crime than Native Americans. Now, here is why that is the wrong argument about the wrong question. Okay? The question is not whether the average illegal alien is a hardened criminal. The question is what illegal immigration does to the country at scale, what it does to our politics, what it does to our fiscal structure, what it does to our long-term governing coalition. And the question, on that question, or those questions, the data that we have is not ambiguous at all. The PPIC, which is the Public Policy Institute of California, found that immigrants prefer a bigger government providing more services over a smaller government at a rate of 74 to 44% compared to native-born Americans. So nearly 3 in 4 prefer bigger government. And that is not a rounding error. So this is a structural political preference that is fundamentally incompatible with every core libertarian value that this audience holds. If you want lower taxes, they want more services. You want government off your back? They trust the federal government at nearly double the rate of native-born citizens. So you spent your whole life building a coalition for liberty, And the open borders policy that you thought was principled is importing its electoral opposition at scale. Now, the LA Times, they surveyed immigrants and found that they align with the Democratic Party in its positions on immigration and government spending by enormous margins. The latest Unidosis poll, which is the largest survey of Latino voters in the country, found that 52% of registered Latino voters are going to vote Democratic in the House this November versus 28% Republican. So those are the political consequences of an open border measured in actual votes. Now, add the welfare state math on top of it. The Federation for American Immigration Reform estimates 18.6 million illegal aliens in the United States as of March of 2025. And every one of them is accessing schools, emergency rooms, and public infrastructure that's paid for by taxpayers who didn't vote for this arrangement. So the argument that they commit less crime on average is pretty cold comfort to the shop owner in Aurora who had Tren de Aragua in his apartment complex. It's cold comfort to the family of Lake and Riley. And the average does not bury your kid. And the bigger argument is it's not even about crime rates. It's about what kind of country are we building? I mean, France built a parallel society and they're paying the invoice on installment since 2005. The American Open Borders Libertarians spent 30 years thinking the Constitution and the market were self-replicating, that if you just let people in, they would absorb the values that built the place. Well, Paris burned last night and answered that theory. You don't get to import millions of people who vote 74% for bigger government, aligned by the Democratic Party by 2-to-1 margins, and then be surprised when the libertarian moment never arrives. The case for remigration is not complicated where I stand. If you want smaller government, and I do, if you want lower taxes, if you want liberty, then you have to have a country whose population also wants those things. Illegal immigration as currently constructed is building the opposite country on purpose. Now, Paris, in my mind, settles the debate about what happens next. It's time to wake up, America. It's time for remigration. It's time to rise in freedom. But if they don't change things, and you're like my buddy Todd, and you want to go to Panama because you don't think that things are going to change or things are going to get worse after Trump, if you're not looking forward to a President Gavin Newsom, I get it, right? The last few years have taught us anything, it's that normal can get canceled pretty fast. You know, your bank account can be frozen. If you voted for Donald Trump and you posted about it publicly and you think that the left isn't going to come scorched earth for you and try and destroy your ability to earn a living in this country, well, I've got news for you. But if you're interested in a plan B, Expat Money, my sponsor, has put together a free special report called 8 Countries to Escape the Immigration Crisis, or AKA World War III. My friends over at Expat Money will walk you through real options for building a sovereign plan B before things get ugly, before the United States looks like France, including countries that are worth looking at, residency paths, and you don't have to pack your bag tomorrow, but you should know your options, right? And support our sponsor. Head to expatmoney.com/WW3. Get the report right now. It's totally free. You can download it right now. Head to expatmoney.com/World War III. All right, the new film, The Odyssey, is coming out, and they have DEI'd up the cast. We're going to talk about that when we get back with our friend John Miltimore. So don't go away. This is the Wake Up America show. Keep unlocking that bonus content. Head on over to forlibertyshop.com, guys. It looks like we've raised, we're well over halfway. Nice. Unlock that bonus content. We'll play our mini documentary for you when we get back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
Thanks for sticking around. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Happy Monday. Glad and thankful to have you here. We have a running segment that we do every Monday. It doesn't feel like Monday unless we've got John Miltimore in the house, and we have John Miltimore in the house. We call it Mondays with Miltimore. How you doing, John?
Hey, doing great. How are you doing, AP?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us again. Glad to have you here.
Good to be with you.
You wrote a great piece that was getting some traction over the weekend. I thought we could talk about, John, which is this new film coming out called The Odyssey. Some might be familiar with it and maybe even read it in high school. But you were analyzing it from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standard because the woman who was cast to play Helen of Troy, a very famous character from Greek culture and mythology, was Lupita Nyong'o. So a very dark-skinned black woman to play a olive-skinned Greek woman from ancient times, John. Now, a lot of people are debating about this. There was a big meme that went around that they were going to make Elliot Page be cast as Achilles, which was really fun and funny, which we found out was not true. But for those of us who are still watching Hollywood movies, John, what's the flap here?
You know, it's to me, it's unfortunate. I'm excited to see this movie. You know, Matt Damon is playing the lead role of Odysseus. I like Christopher Nolan's films a lot. I think the casting has become a major distraction. Whether that hurts the movie or helps, you know, is remain to be seen. But yeah, there was rumors that Elliot Page was going to play Achilles. That's not true. Lupita Nyong'o is cast, you know, as Helen of Troy, and that has, you know, invited a lot of scrutiny. I think it's unfortunate, but I do think the critics do have a point. I think race probably did, you know, play a role in the decision here. But I think attacking Christopher Nolan for that is you know, isn't helpful. But I really think attacking Lupita Nyong'o isn't helpful. She got cast for the role of a lifetime. And the truth is, it's probably a minor role in the film anyway. But, you know, there's a lot of, you know, rhetoric out there and just some nasty comments about her. She's not at fault here. Like the target really should be Hollywood diversity standards. Like to take home an Oscar now, you have to be sufficiently diverse. And I think that's nonsense. You should be, you know, artists shouldn't have to focus about how diverse their casts are. I think that's ridiculous. I think Hollywood was better before they started doing this. But that's the game. And Christopher Nolan is kind of, you know, I think he did this because he's playing the game. But to go back a little further, Dunkirk, was a movie he did in 2016, and he was skewered for that because it was too white. And the attacks then I found ridiculous, but they were vicious. They accused him of being a racist. They were tying him to Charlottesville, of all things, because it was too white, and they said, oh, this is really just not historic, because there were some dark faces at Dunkirk, and there that's true. There was the British Empire was still existed, and there was some of those countries came from Africa,
or India.
And India as well. And so people claimed it was about, they just wanted a historic movie. That was nonsense. They saw this as an opportunity to make an example of Christopher Nolan. So I think he is, gun shy about this, and it probably did factor into his decisions. But don't attack Lupita Nyong'o over this. She's a very good actress, and is she the most beautiful woman in the world? Well, maybe not, but Diana Kruger wasn't either, and she played Helen of Troy a couple decades earlier. I think we're just getting way too involved, making race a central thing in a movie that it really doesn't belong there.
Now, there was an article that came out in the New York Times that was discussing the sort of racial bending that goes on with characters and roles. And it said that, no problem with Lupita Nyong'o playing Helen of Troy, but we're not ready yet for Ryan Gosling to play Barack Obama. Now, John, I have a background in the dramatic arts, and it was not uncommon for there to be gender bending with roles or race bending with roles. However, it was an unspoken, it was common at the time to have someone, you could play, I don't know if you've ever seen of Mice and Men, but there's a character in there that's mentally disabled. And well, you can't really hire a mentally disabled person to play a mentally disabled person. I'm sure that the left would try, but there are unspoken rules about who is allowed to play what certain roles and races. And I don't know, is there some understanding? Do you think that white people just can't identify? Do you think that black people can identify with the white condition, but do you think that white people can't identify with the black condition? Because that seems to be the unspoken understanding here.
No, I think all of that's nonsense, and we're overthinking this. You can be a straight person and play a gay person. You can be a gay person and play a straight person. And that has always been understood. And are there some unspoken rules in Hollywood? I think there have been for a long time, but we're not talking unspoken rules here. The Academy actually said, no, you're not eligible for an Oscar if you're not diverse enough. And we know what they mean by diversity. You need to have a gay person in there, or a person of color, or a woman. If you look, there's been great movies and I know people complain about this. Shawshank Redemption, one of the greatest movies of all time. And people, somebody was complaining on Twitter just recently about this, and they got ratioed because the entire movie, there's a 10 seconds of women are represented, in the speaking. Who cares? It's a great movie. It takes place at a prison for men, right? We don't need to try to insert female roles into this. We're way overthinking this, and I didn't talk about this in the article, but I think the art does suffer. I think what you have, artists shouldn't have to play this diversity game and like that racial zealots have created. They should be making good movies. They should be making good scripts. And when the studio comes back and says, well, we like this, but you got to get us a female character, or you got to create, a black character, artists should say, sorry, we're going to go, you don't like my script, we're going to take it to another studio. And the good thing is that environment is becoming increasingly the reality today. If we're seeing, it's not like the old days when a handful of studios controlled everything. Independent films are really coming back. They're doing well at the box office. I think Hollywood has ruined their own product by obsessing about race in a very unhealthy way.
Now, do you think what would you think character preparation would be like for someone like Ryan Gosling to play Barack Obama, John? If you were gonna, let's say you were cast in the role of Barack Obama, what would you do to prepare for a role like that, John?
I'd go pure method. I'm a method actor. I would be Obama for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I would go hang out in Illinois in the seedy bars and smoke cigarettes and talk to other people. That's the only way I could effectively be Barack Obama.
Okay.
I'm teasing, of course.
Well, of course you're joking, but I mean, like, you know, in order to do the proper method acting, of course, you put yourself in the position of someone who is like that. So if you were going to play the role of, say, a down and dirty black man from the mean streets of Chicago, and you were going to do something like that, don't you think you'd probably get yourself killed, John?
Maybe, you know, but that's the Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, he's like the one person, he gets attacked a lot because he's a method actor, right? Like, he goes in for 9 months in a role, and some other actors think it's ridiculous. So they're like, we're acting, you don't have to. But he's a defendant of it. He thinks, and as an artist, he says, that's the way I do it. If you don't like it, that's fine. I think it's kind of crazy. You are actors. Go perform. You got to remember, we're just performing here. And just to go back to what we were talking earlier, if a straight person can play a gay person, and a gay person can play a straight person, a white person, you know, like all of this, we obsess about these things to a degree that I think is just ridiculous. And I'm gonna go see The Odyssey, okay? And you know, it's one of those. I hope it's a good movie. I'm not gonna let the casting decisions bother me. I think we need to extend, you know, Christopher Nolan a little grace here. He was smeared as a racist 10 years ago for this, and you know,
don't you think though? Isn't it more likely though that he was harmed? He felt hurt by the accusations that he was a racist for not including black people, and that now he's just trying to throw a bone to the woke left in Hollywood who want to make Wakanda forever every movie.
I think that's entirely it. And, you know, Shelby Steele, I wrote this in the book. He wrote a book many years ago called White Guilt. And Shelby Steele is himself, you know, a black man. I don't know if you call it, he's part white, part black, probably, you know, but he's been writing on these things for a very long time. And he said, there's something in America today where they strip you of any sort of morality, you know, moral power you have by calling you racist. The mere accusation, it's almost enough to strip you of everything. And, you know, people can say, oh, Nolan should be brave and make the movie he wants. And I would like him to do that. Don't get me wrong. I would like that. But that's expecting a lot of people. He's a director, and he made a movie 10 years ago and he received the most vile attacks, you know, over that. So I think it's, you know, you're asking a lot for somebody just to say, no, I'm going to just go and do what I want. He's playing this game that Hollywood created. Hollywood should re-examine their standards and say, no, we don't need diversity standards. That has not helped. And I think that little chapter we had might be closing. I think DEI is on its way out. And I'd like to see the Academy revisit this and say, you know what, this was the wrong thing to do.
Elon Musk is not a big fan of this, says Chris Nolan is pissing on Homer's grave disgraceful. So he takes a little bit stronger stance on that. John, do you think he's a racist?
No, I don't think Elon Musk is racist, and like I actually understand some of the outrage over this. Like, part of the reason I wrote this article, because I have friends that were sharing stuff with me, family members, like they were really angry. They're like, what, you know, and I'm like, well, let's just, you know, pump the brakes here and think about this a little bit more. And like I say, I'm not saying Lupita Nyong'o, if I'm making the movie, would she be the person I cast in that role? Probably not.
Why not?
But we shouldn't be attacking her.
Why
because
not?
In the entire world of people, I think I could find someone who I think of in my head is a better role for the face that launched 1,000 ships. Okay, like that's. But she did nothing wrong here. She's an actress. And if you look, I've read a little bit. I think she suffered under this a little bit, like this scrutiny. She didn't want this, and she's receiving. So people are calling her nappy and ugly, and like, why? And I'm like, that's just mean. She's an individual. She's an actress. She's doing, and I bet you she plays the role very well in the movie. Okay, let's put all of her skin color aside. I bet you her performance is going to be very good. And we just need to remember that these are individuals. She didn't create this stupid system Hollywood did, and we should be attacking that, not the people that are just trying to, you know, have careers, the artists that are just trying to navigate these racial politics.
Now, Elon Musk is, you know, one of the most powerful, richest men in the world. He has the ability to say things like this and not have to worry so much about the backlash. He has the FU money. Not everybody else has that kind of situation, John. So, I mean, you know, you're sort of protected to some degree to say these kinds of things, but how does it get into the culture, John, that people can say what Elon Musk said there and not have their lives and their career destroyed? Because when you're talking about DEA, we're talking about a pernicious assault on free speech and liberty here in the United States. So how do we go from having the freedom? How can regular Americans, how can we get to the point where regular Americans can enjoy the type of freedom of speech that Elon Musk enjoys? Or is freedom of speech dependent on just how much money you have in this country?
No, I understand those concerns, and you have a lot of people that they have opinions on this, but they're afraid to share them. And I think as a country, we got to go and say, you know what, we can disagree on some of these things. It's okay to have opinions. Maybe your opinion's right, maybe it's wrong, but it's okay to have opinions. Not everything you can oppose DEI and not be racist, right? Now there's people that say, nope, this is all rooted in racism. And you have this kind of, we live in a weird time. If you look, I touched on this just a little in the article, but what you had were people that looked at Hollywood said Hollywood's too white. Like, if you remember that when that trended during the Oscars, like they're like, oh, this is like Hollywood's too white. We need to do something about that. That in itself is a very racist attitude. And what you have are, I think, a lot of the most racist people in this country are these people that obsess over DEI, and they do it for political reasons. They feel very virtuous, like I care about these people. You don't care about people, and we need to start. They're welcome to believe that, but we should stop paying so much attention to them. And what we should do is we should be laughing at them. Like I think what we saw, there's an actor, and I'm spacing on his name, but he was in Rogue One. He was in James Bond, and he's a Scandinavian guy, and he made a movie, and he was asked about this at a press conference. He literally laughed in the reporter's face and said, "Are you kidding me?" Because they were saying, like, there's just not enough inclusivity here, and he laughed at them. I think we should laugh at people and say, no, it's okay to make a Hollywood movie that is all white or all black, like let's stop obsessing over this.
John, are you celebrating Pride Month
I think it's absurd. I think all of this fake holiday stuff as a country, we just need to stop. Okay.
What do you mean? It's the 250th anniversary of the United States. I'm proud to be an American.
Hey, celebrating the 250th anniversary of our country, I think that's wonderful. This idea that certain months represent certain marginalized people, I think it's ridiculous. I don't like it, but that's just my view. Some people are going to say, well, of course we have to do that. I think it's nonsense, and I think we should,
Why is it nonsense, John? Gay people historically being oppressed in this country, Stonewall riots. Don't we need a month to remember and celebrate the gays who died, who gave that freedom to me?
Yeah, I think it's odd to when you start to celebrate oppression. Like, I think it's a very weird thing. And it was like during the George Floyd, when we saw these monuments going up, like to celebrate, like to me, it's kind of a bizarre culture when you start to focus on these things and memorialize them in this way. Like, I don't think it's a healthy way to go. But at the same time, I'm kind of an outlier on this thing. I don't like the idea of putting presidents on mountains either. Like, this was something I've long said, like, I don't feel about, I really don't like that. And people think I'm crazy for that too. So.
Well, okay. Good to know, John. So Pride Month, not celebrated at the Miltimore household.
It will not be. And let me go back and say one thing. It's not just presidents on mountains. Trump, have you seen this? He wants to put himself on the $250 bill.
Yeah. And?
I do not like. There was once in our country, at least presidents were long dead when we started to put them on money. I don't like. This is something more that you see in banana republic countries, like dictators that put themselves on money. It's okay. It's one thing when we put Grant on the $50 bill, 60 years after he's dead. Presidents doing this while they're alive, I think is really, again, these are things, this bothered me a lot. Maybe it doesn't bother a lot of other people, probably, Trump supporters especially.
It might have bothered me back in my Lulbert days, but I've since abandoned Lulbertarianism, John. And I think, and I consider myself more of an anti-communist, an anti-socialist.
You say that, but that's exactly what a lot of socialists have done. They've put themselves on
I know,
money.
I know, but it's like they're bullies, John. And so what we have to do sometimes is to give them a little taste of their own medicine. And this is like the least. If you're going to violate somebody's nap, isn't this like the least nap? Like, when it comes to nap violations, this has got to be the lowest on the list of crimes that Lulberts have to see, right? So I want them to suffer, John. I think that it's important for the left to feel pain and for them to cry out screaming in pain, and for us to sort of stick the red hot poker in their eyes putting Trump on the $250 bill has got to be one of the smallest, I guess, crimes against libertarianism that could ever be committed. Could you understand why it might be important for this to be like a cultural win against the left, who sees Trump sort of tearing down their entire project to some degree? Could you sort of sympathize with that point of view, John?
There's a phrase that, you know, what goes around comes around, and Republicans are not going to be in power much longer.
Oh no, here it comes. The left is going to do it to us, John. The left is going to do it to us.
Angry too. No, like, I'm going to be angry too when AOC wants to put herself on money, or Gavin Newsom. Like, this is something I don't think it's a good thing to do, and I'm angry that Trump is doing this.
John, where's the victory for libertarians? Where's the victory? It's like, it's always surrender. It's always I'm going to invite you. Now, I know that I'm being confrontational, but I'm going to ask you a favor to please disregard my tone, and please consider opening up your mind to the possibility that the argument that what if the left does it to us is a really bad argument. It's a really terrible, no good, and I'll use a stronger word. It's a shitty argument, because the left is always going to do that. Whatever it is that you say that you're afraid that the left is going to do, John, they're always you have to assume they're always going to do it anyway. Essentially what you're saying is, and I had this conversation with JD Tuccilli from Reason Magazine a few weeks ago. What you're essentially saying is that you're walking into a knife fight, and woe be to you if you decide to build a bat, say carve a bat out of wood and bring a bat, because when you're walking into the knife fight, which is politics, the left might take your bat and use your bat against you. So what you're suggesting in a sense, John, is unilateral disarmament, that you should not create a tool to defend yourself because the left might take that tool away from you. Yeah, if I build a firearm, if I build a Gatling gun, sure, the left might take my gun and use it against me, but they still have to take it first. So, I mean, don't you see, John, how, like, especially Republicans and conservatives, there's a reason why the right has become more anti-libertarian than at any point in our entire lives. And the reason is because of that argument. What if the left does it to us? Nobody on the right gives a shit anymore. Nobody listens to us. And it's because they're right. They're right, John. They're right. The left will always. I mean, can you see, like, the point that I'm making, though? Can you at least, like, meet me halfway here? It's to some degree why this is not a very good argument.
So, counterpoint. It's also a bad argument to say it's okay when we do it. Okay. And
no, it's not.
What you're saying.
No, it's not. It's not a bad argument. It's not a bad argument.
And here's why.
It is okay when we do it. It is okay when we do it.
Who's doing it? Like,
it is, but yes, it is.
I'm saying this would be wrong if it's a Democrat doing it or a Republican doing it.
You don't fight the left. You don't fight the left hard enough, John. You don't fight the communists hard enough. You don't fight the socialists hard enough. That is why Donald Trump is president right now, because the type of people, the Mike Pences of the conservative world, the Paul Ryans of the John Cornyn's, right? The people who want to play nice with the left, right? The people who want to play footsie with Nancy Pelosi and do deals with AOC instead of fight them like the warlords that they are. Like, John, you're giving ground to people who want to destroy you. It is okay when we do it. And here's why. Because we are the good guys. It is okay that we nuked Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because they started it, because they were the bad guys. It is okay for us to use force against people whose entire ideology is that they will use force against us and destroy us entirely and totally. Our ideology is they can live as long as they don't aggress upon us. But if they do aggress upon us, then they've got to go. And then it is okay when we do it, because we are the good guys, John. Like, don't you believe that we libertarians, don't you believe we're the good guys?
So Nietzsche once said, you know, be careful in slaying monsters that one doesn't become a monster oneself. I think there's wisdom in that. And I think when you start to think along these things, the lines where I can do because I'm the good guy, he's the bad guy. I can do what I want to that
John,
person.
Nietzsche's
That's a
entire
very
philosophy was that
dangerous way to think.
Nietzsche's entire philosophy was that the strong do what they want and that the weak suffer what they must. So I mean, in some ways, I wouldn't quote Nietzsche if your argument is against
I'll
a
quote
strong man.
anybody that has a good line for the most part.
Okay,
I'm
but
not
his
saying
entire
quoting Nietzsche does not mean I subscribe to everything he
well, but I mean, listen, his entire philosophy is that the Ubermensch must do what he will and that the weak must suffer what they want. So I mean, like that, he takes that to its extreme, even farther than I would take it, John. I'm just using this as a point to illustrate that there has to be some kind of wartime libertarianism, dude. There's got to be some form of libertarianism that's capable of winning a war. There has not been, in my opinion, libertarians should not be in control of anything. John, I wouldn't, no offense, I love you, bud, but I probably wouldn't vote for you because you know why? Because I would be afraid that you would surrender everything that we believe in to our enemies. And I think that is something that MAGA Republicans and Trump Republicans understand about libertarians, that libertarians don't understand about themselves, is that our enemies will destroy everything we love. They will destroy everything we care about, John, and they will leave you in the lurch. And then you'll say, what if they do it to us? What if they do it to us? I'll give you the last word.
No, I just think we need to look at these through the lens of principles still. Like principles matter. Have good principles. Don't jettison your principles just because there's some bad actors out there. There's always going to be factions out there that are, the Bolsheviks, the Jacobins. They're always going to be, creating problems. But if we get rid of our principles just to go crush them, again, we're going to end up with a very, very ugly state of affairs. So that's my final word.
Okay.
But I will pitch my go to The Take if you want to read my article on the Odyssey. The Take by John Miltimore on Substack.
Okay, The Take by John Miltimore on Substack. You had the final word, and we'll leave it at that. John, thank you very much for your time. It's always fun for a little pugilism on a Monday morning. You have a good day.
You bet. My pleasure, AP. Have a good week.
Thank you very much. Well, my next guest is not going to be the type of guy who would ever surrender to the left. His name is Austin Padgett, because the APs for liberty fight the left. Yeah, rest in peace, my principles. Exactly. Here's the thing. If your principle is surrender, if your principle is to lose quietly while the left destroys everything that you love, it's time for you to get rid of your principles. It's time to kick those principles out the door. My next guest, Austin Padgett, thinks he's diagnosed the same problems with American libertarians. He says that the Libertarian Party agrees with me that the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement in the United States has an Israel problem, not just a foreign policy problem, but an obsession with a little country thousands of miles away. My guest, Austin Padgett, has been watching the destruction of the liberty movement happening in real time. He's ready to name names. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Thomas Massie for president in 2028. Don't go away. Go to the 4 Liberty shop. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Sometimes the libertarian ends justify the non-libertarian means. This is the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
If Thomas Massie runs for president in 2028, I think he's got a really good shot to win. I'm saying that right now. I think he could win this thing. I think he is much more in line with where the voters are than anyone else who's going to be running. But even if he doesn't win, this isn't going to be something like Ron Paul or Pat Buchanan. This is going to be something on the scale of Bernie Sanders. It's going to be huge. I think that would really be the best thing I can imagine for the country politically right now. If Thomas...
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. They call me AP for Liberty, but there's two APs for Liberty. The second AP for Liberty joins us live right now, Austin Padgett. Good morning, Austin. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, brother.
Good morning, Austin. Happy to be on the show.
Whew, we've got a lot to discuss here. Boy, Austin, has this, you said it, the whole thing during the break. Challenging times for people like ourselves. I mean, how did you react when you first saw that clip from Dave Smith about, Thomas Massie could be the future of American politics?
What's a good analogy? Like the way you react when you see something that's like hard to look at because it's sad.
Cringe.
Like that's yeah.
Cringe.
And there's a lot to go over with this campaign. Like, the reasons why he lost, he campaigned on Israel and Epstein. Ed Gallerin campaigned on Trump's agenda, right? Or that's what Ed Gallerin's ads were about, since he didn't even really have to campaign. And so that kind of tells the whole story, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you kill yourself on being unreasonable over this single issue, and then when people vote you down or ignore you, then you assume it's because of that one issue and your psychosis accelerates. But it's because you're being single issue voters on an issue that's not popular in the Republican Party at a time of like intense coalition politics.
Which isn't to say that they're wrong, right? We're not discussing necessarily the correctness of the argument just yet, the principle of the argument just yet. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. But electorally, the ideas that Thomas Massie campaigned on, I think were significantly different from the ideas that he used to campaign on when he had 80% of the vote. But my argument, Austin, has been that libertarians are completely unaware. They're self-unaware. Not just of the way that they're perceived, but of how unpopular their most popular issues are, which we find to be deeply unfortunate, because the most popular issues amongst libertarians right now seems to be, and I'm saying this, somewhat hyperbolically, but I mean, sticking it to the Jews to some large extent, which electorally is unpopular. Now, it might be popular among libertarians. It might get you a lot of clicks online, might get you a lot of podcast views. But it's probably unwise to run in a rural district in Kentucky on that issue.
Yeah, and nobody cares, right? Like, sure, you're gonna get if you campaign with the American right guy, there's probably gonna be some rich Jewish Americans who donate against your campaign, but that's still not what the issues were about. And the funding was, big on both sides. It was like 18 million to 25 or 30. There's a bunch of different numbers floating around that are kind of inconsistent, but there was enough money on both sides to get the message out. And the swing from 80% to losing by 10 points should tell people something. But it's not that I'm kind of went easy on it when Massey lost. I didn't even say anything that day because it is a big blow. That's one thing to warn people about this for years. It's another for them to be like faced with a terrible result of not correctly processing their mistakes. So what I expect to see is the 7 stages of grief. I think we were at shock and disbelief, and now we're at denial. And I'm being careful about prodding people too hard in denial because the next step is anger. And then we get to bargaining, depression, reconstruction, and then maybe they can find some hope. I am full of hope. I'm not focused on Epstein and Israel, so I'm aware that like education has been defederalized and that we're reindustrializing on a massive scale, and that all the leftist globalist countries NGO networks have been disrupted and they're losing elections.
Yeah, USAID got disrupted, and all of a sudden all these South American countries are going from socialist and communist towards more capitalistic candidacy. So there's lots of reason.
As I predicted, I bet they could beat Europe.
Yeah, lots of reason to be white-pilled. But we'll get to that in just a moment, because you say that the libertarians, the ones who are kind of the loudest ones in the room who represent the label, haven't talked about anything else besides Israel in years. So when did you first notice that the obsession was crowding everything else out?
Well, people get mad at you when you start noticing things. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
I think my pinned post is from over 2 years ago, before the election, warning that I said what would happen was if the libertarians split with Trump over Israel, it would put the ball into the court of the neoconservatives, who would take credit for all the economic reforms that I know Trump's going to do, that I know are going to be successful. They're going to take credit for the things they fought against for years, and they're going to take that political capital. Libertarians are going to be putting themselves on the outside and fighting, and then will continue to be Trump, and the momentum will be successful, but maybe not as good as it could have been, or they will ultimately solve the problems in a way where like libertarians just become a historical footprint of people who predicted a future that other people brought about, right? Because we said we want the U.S. to be free, we want to end the globalist stuff. It's going to be other people who do that, other people who can actually engage and take political responsibility. And libertarians were kind of in the intellectual spot, and the intellectual spot is incredibly valuable, right? Like Plato rates philosophers above kings, but we got jealous of the popularity of the king, which was Trump. And so then we became sophists, which is all the way at the very bottom of the hierarchy, right above tyrant, right? Because sophists help tyrants. That's the populist politics dynamics, where you get someone who's a vessel for the crowd. And so it's kind of a poetic symmetry that king and philosopher are mirror sophist and tyrant.
So you use the word sophists, and you say these are bitter intellectuals turned sophists, which is a pretty specific accusation. Who are you describing, and what does the sophistry look like in practice?
I would say Dave is probably the most accurate example of this, and it looks like I don't know. You see, increasingly he says things that nobody can take seriously. It's like you can't believe they're saying it, right? It's like a big weakness from previous positions, and there's a lot of stuff that ends up getting denied to support the importance of Israel. For example, right? If I said Trump's effort against the globalists was actually important, right? So maybe that's a reason not to care about Israel. Now libertarians start to argue that globalism isn't real, one world government is a conspiracy kook thing, when it's really more about coordination of policy, not necessarily an official government with enforcement. And so like, and then all these narratives we spent 10 years really destroying the left and burrowing under and exposing them. And we had all these great narratives, right? Like that the left treats you like cattle, right? They treat you without agency. The Fabian Socialist logo is a wolf in sheep's clothing. There's precedence to this when like herding civilizations take over farmer civilizations and they literally treat them like sheep. The removal of your agency through central planning, the analogies they love to make to bees and ants. Like, we know leftists treat you like cattle without agency. And that was kind of a known thing and a talking point. And that's been replaced with, oh, treating you like an animal is a Jewish thing, right? And that's connected to like Epstein and Palantir. And then another thing we used to know is the left ruined your life. They ruined the economy. And then we pretended you can't afford a house because of Iraq Zionists. Trump's deregulation cuts, just with like modest estimates, save $2 to $3 trillion a year, not even counting compounding innovation. That's more than the entire war on terror in like 2-3 years.
Now, Austin, you're very white-pilled, and I love it. And we're going to get there to all the white pill moments here in just a moment. But before we do, we've got to like address the black pill in the room thoroughly here, because the libertarian critique of empire and foreign intervention used to be one of the movement's most coherent and defensible positions. I mean, Ron Paul built an entire coalition on it. That's how I got into the libertarian movement. But how did that legitimate argument become a vehicle for something uglier?
Specifically, we used to talk about the incentives of empire, and then it became because Israel did it, right? That's kind of the foundational reason that people, the context people talk about it in now, which is clearly just a way to double up, and they're marketing with the Groyper demographic, who already blames everything on Jews. So you blame everything on Israel, then you've got a synced marketing channel for your political populism. And so that's why we that's kind of like how you could describe us turning into sophists to basically target that low-level populist narrative, but without actually, and then wanting to be popular without actually adopting political responsibility or forging solutions like Trump. Because someone might say, oh, well, Trump's a populist too. But Trump's integrated his populism with actual solutions, right? Like when populism is like that, then it's good. When it's like sophistry to tyrant, then it's bad. When it's philosopher to king, then it's good.
We got a comment in the chat I think is worthy of addressing. Horse Force, he's very upset at what we're saying. He says, yeah, libertarians are so ignorant. He's being sarcastic. He says, they believe the nation should be constitutional. So stupid of them. But here's the thing. They are ignorant because you don't get points for having principles. You get points for putting them into practice. I don't give a shit if you agree with me. If you can't advance that ball down the field, or you refuse to advance the ball down the field, if your principles prevent you from advancing those principles, you don't get credit for saying, oh, I'm a good person. It's like when Dave Smith says, oh, I'm anti-war. It's the same mentality when the left says, oh, I'm anti-gun. Okay, well, you don't get credit for saying, oh, well, I'm a good person and I think good things are good and bad things are bad. Okay, well, yeah, you essentially have the mentality of a child there. But you say that libertarians want the popularity of Trump without doing the work that it takes to make real political change. So what does the work actually look like to have the political popularity of Trump, and why aren't libertarians doing it?
Well, part of it is one is you think, okay, because we're not in office. And then there's other reasons like, okay, why are you not in office? But the other fundamental reason is I don't think we're even capable of it, even if we were in office. Because libertarians have never really engaged in what it takes do anything, right? When you get to the point where you actually have responsibility, it'll hit you like a ton of bricks, where you're like, holy crap, wait, what am I touching? What is it moving? What are going to be the impacts? Like, how am I going to stay in control? It's very easy to say, take all bring every troop home. All right. Like, if you get into the office and you pull every troop home from every base in the U.S., do you think that like something could happen? It's easy to say online, but have you really considered the dynamics of the security market, or the dependencies, or like how to engage with dismantling an empire outside of a red button question, right? And that's why libertarians are there's kind of still lulberts on foreign policy. We got over the lulbert issue on a lot of topics, right? We got over it on welfare, where we're like, oh, I guess we can't abolish that in one day. We got over it with immigration, where we're like, okay, we're not actually a private property society. Like, but on war, we're still kind of in this easy, just bring it all home phase, which it completely neglects the constraints of the situation, or the actual reality of Trump's strategy in terms of making the region less dependent on us.
I'm pulling up an image right now that I made yesterday. It's a cartoon which shows an extremely dysgenic Lulbert who is carrying several diseases. He's got his black and yellow flag. He's got his transgender flag, and he's screaming at someone who looks ostensibly like myself. And he's screaming at me saying, "You're not real libertarians like me." And it's there to demonstrate the point that it's like, when you have this group of people who are so disgusting and who parade themselves naked on stage, and you say, oh, you're not a real libertarian and I'm the real libertarian, you're not really saying what you think you're saying, in other ways. When you look, the aesthetics of the Trump movement, for example, aesthetics are so important, and it's such an important thing that libertarians had an entire battle at their national convention over whether or not they should be required to wear clothes. Right? They're still fighting the battle over whether or not they should put the most dysgenic people in the liberty movement as the public's face. So the libertarians can't even agree that you should take an attractive person who's capable of speaking about your principles clearly and putting them as the public face of your movement. But libertarians, they seem to want to push in everybody's face the most hedonistic and the most disgusting people who claim to be the most libertarians, and try and push out anyone who smells good or might have showered within the past week. So, I mean, you'll never even achieve the popularity of the Trump movement without even like an attempt at the basic aesthetics, would we, Austin?
No. And I mean, there's been some theoretical progress on that, right? Where the perception of libertarians was more left-wing. Like, when I met Trump, the first thing he asked us was like, I'm nice to gays, and would you like weed legalized? And we're like, great, thank you. But the economy and war or whatever. So that was the perception of libertarians, and we successfully kind of shifted it off of that, but we then immediately ruined the new label with foreign policy Lulbertism, working with the left to hurt the right rather than help the right, and everything else that goes along with that. So now it's like, okay, how do you rebuild again right after we just fixed the label just to ruin it? And part of it was that we never really fixed the label because there were problems within our movement that we didn't really realize.
Now, the LP ran Chase Oliver in 2024 and got completely blown out. It was the worst vote total, I think, maybe in LP's history. They might have had one that was worse. Do you think that the LP is beyond saving, Austin?
Hopefully. It depends, right? Like, if you're existing in a vacuum, right? If I just had the LP and I could use it productively. But the question is, like, do you have the other people with the vision and the energy to sustain that? And is it easier just to like?
I can tell you that it's not there. It's not there. I mean, I spent 10 years in the Libertarian Party back when people thought there was going to be a libertarian moment, and even then I realized that they absolutely do not want to win. Anybody who tries to sort of break out, it becomes the crabs in a bucket mentality, and we don't need to dissect that here. But I mean, is there a version though of libertarian foreign policy that is intellectually honest and doesn't end up in a place where we have to pretend like Thomas Massey is going to have a groundswell of support in 2028? Or, I mean, do you think that the non-interventionist framework has been so thoroughly poisoned that it can't be rehabilitated?
Well, I think it's just not engaging. It's not engaging with the dependency, the security dependency. If you think of security like a market and the U.S. doing the military role of a lot of countries, like, they're not addressing that situation. So your end goal might be good, but like if you're not engaging, you can't solve the problem. And the libertarian solution is typically, right, what we want to tell conservatives is, oh, you do get a free market and then you have a really strong country, be able to produce your own infrastructure, your own munitions, right? You want it like World War II. The reason we were strong was we had factories. So like prosperity is strength. Okay. So why aren't we incorporating what Trump's doing there into our libertarian argument about war, right? And I've said it before, Trump got Europe to fund its own defense. Japan got Europe. He got Japan to build their own military. He's making the Middle East less dependent on us. He's making it so that the U.S. is less insecure because we can produce our own stuff and we're getting more productive and prosperous. So that is the actual way you would unwind the empire. So I mean, that's, again, Trump, number one libertarian, strikes again, number one defender of the Constitution, you know, which is funny because like the libertarians went with like Oron and his philosophy and all that, and he talks crap about the Constitution. Now they're saying that, we're violating the Constitution. Meanwhile, Trump is using the Constitution to eliminate government. So like, it's just losing and complaining and thrashing on every side from every potential angle.
Well, now, Austin, I read your writings quite often, and I agree with probably 99% of everything that I say, but I see you sort of experiencing the same thing that I experienced, which there's a lot of shooting the messenger going on. So like my argument has been, at least as clearly as I can state it, is that libertarians' problems right now are entirely self-inflicted. All of the problems that we have are our fault. But in this phase of grief that libertarians are suffering with under 2020, under this kind of Massey delusion that we're struggling with, you know, there's this sort of desire to blame the problems that libertarians face on Fox News, on like they're blaming the boomers. They're blaming AIPAC. They're blaming
it's very leftist.
It's a very leftist framework, right? It's a victimhood. We're victims. If do we think that if AIPAC didn't exist, that people would suddenly be voting for libertarians? I could assure you, most assuredly, they would not fucking vote for libertarians. You could eliminate AIPAC today, and every Jew in the you could deport every Jew in the United States, and libertarians would still lose every fucking election. But they want to shoot the messenger because nobody wants to be told that they're fat and they need to lose weight. Nobody wants to be told that they need to get in the gym and they need to get healthy and they need to, you know, get a diet and exercise routine. But I mean, politically, isn't that really what libertarians need? They need to get their fat asses off the couch and they need a 1980 style montage. They need to get into the martial arts. They need to, you know, maybe win a few matches in the dojo, do something healthy for themselves and stop being dysgenic and stop coping and stop shooting the messengers who are telling them, hey, you're fat, you need to lose weight. I mean, maybe we just need to be nicer about it. Like you've gained a little weight, libertarians. Perhaps you might be the problem.
Ooh, have you noticed this might be a problem?
It might be a problem. It might be that you've eaten too much. You've eaten 20 eclairs every night.
Perhaps it's not all the Jews.
Perhaps it's not the Jews' reason why you're full. Like libertarians would find a reason to blame would blow up to 300 pounds and they'd still find a reason to blame the Jews. They do that. They do that. They call it goy slop. Have you seen this?
I saw the American right guy talking about that at the grocery store about how you should only buy kosher food to avoid the poison.
It's the goy slop that they're eating. Yeah, not that their fat ass can't read a nutrition label.
But it's worse than even being fat. It's like a lot of times it's like a dynamic where you're taking advantage of someone or using someone, and then someone calls that out, and then you get even more angry, right? Than if they're just calling out your own behavior.
Mhm.
There's like more to be defensive about. But
they're suspicious. They're suspicious of us because we tell them that they need to fix their own problems, but they believe everything Dave Smith says because he gives them all. You want to talk about goy slop? Talk about that retarded bullshit about Massey 2028. It's like that's what you should be suspicious of. The guy who tells you exactly what you want to hear in the face of all the evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, it turns out that libertarians aren't actually independent thinkers. Like a lot of people arrived at libertarianism because they were independent thinkers.
Right.
But in terms of the propagation of narratives within the movement, that's just like any other movement. People are just latching on and repeating stuff and letting these narratives control their worldview, and without examining like the different flaws and the narrative blocks along the narrative chain or things like that. And it's also the psychosis, right? Because if you rationally deconstruct a narrative, like I did this with some people with Massey and AIPAC stuff, and I got them to realize that it's not really because of Israel that Massey lost his election. And they're like, you're right, it's boomers. Like the best I could get was them to transfer the blame onto another group.
Yeah.
But there's no like boomers also elected Trump over Kamala. If you look at all those graphs people posted about Massey's votes per age group versus Ed Galleran's, it was identical to the spread between Trump and Kamala. So it's not you shouldn't be excited about the boomers dying off. You should be lucky they're still able to elect someone like Trump who might be able to put us in a better position to fix things than like a destroyed country and a totally leftist population.
Yeah. You can't blame the voters in this sense because they're saying like that it's uninformed voters, but the problem wasn't that they were uninformed. The problem was that they were informed. They were just they just
That's
didn't
what the
like.
ads were for.
Yeah, they didn't like what they heard. They didn't like what they saw. So Austin, give us the white pill on the way out. I've abused your time this morning for longer than I should have. But tell me your thoughts. Where do we go from here? We're not going to shoot the messenger on this show, Austin. So what do you think is like a good logical next step? If there's any people who are like a libertarian and they're saying to themselves, I'm ready to stop blaming everyone else for my problems. I'm ready to stop losing. I'm ready to stop whining, and I'm ready to start winning for my principles. What should they be doing right now?
All right. Well, when you're asking me for black pills, I'll give you white pills. So I'll give you a black pill now since you're asking for a white one. Okay. Basically, don't get all your hopes in a Massey re-election. I saw an absolutely delusional take, which was like, hey guys, gather around, guys. Picture this, imagine this. All right. We've got Tucker. We've got MTG. We've got Dave Smith, we've got Joe Rogan, we've got Theo Vaughn, we've got Joe Kent or whoever.
Nick Fuentes.
I don't know if I'm repeating people. Yeah,
Nick Fuentes.
Actually, that's their big sad plan. It's like, hey Nick, you want to endorse Massey? And then Nick goes back on his show and is like, Massey's, sucks. Like he says it right after the pandering interview. He's like, he only hates Israel because he's a libertarian. Nick's like, I want to invade Israel. Also, I think invading this place is cool. And libertarians are like, please, Nick Fuentes, hate Israel for us. And
but don't want to intervene in Israel.
Shitting on me because I'm saying, hey, maybe Trump's foreign policy will help us deconstruct the empire. Meanwhile, Nick is like, conquer, but not for Jews. And they're like, please, Nick, support us. Which is this sad, clearly unsuccessful channel. But anyways, they were like, just picture all of that, right? And what kind of a campaign we can get and how we can win. And I'm like, you literally just did that. You just had a big influencer campaign with all those people you just mentioned, Tucker and everybody. And the result was you lost to Ed Galleran in Kentucky. So maybe the fishback Casey Putsch lane is not the right the good opportunity.
Maybe the Vivek Ramaswamy libertarian nationalist vein is the right way to go.
Why are they compromising their principles for failure? And that gets back to the sophistry and the popularity and stuff. And I think and a lot of people are like, the tabloids in the 90s got more views than the newspaper. More people read the tabloids than the newspaper. That doesn't mean that the tabloids were more influential in the elections than the newspapers, right? So just like view count on X as people are scrolling through the videos it's not necessarily the same kind of metric relative to corporate media.
It's true. We are the number one show on X this morning, though, by a lot. So I will say that.
Is that true?
Yeah, we are. 3,800 views so far this morning. The next one in second place only has 460. So there we go.
Wow.
Now, Robert Murphy's really mad at us, Austin.
What did he say?
Oh, he's saying that there's a lot of daylight between that. American libertarianism is defined solely by Jew hatred. My words. They're consumed by it. Nothing matters except Israel and the Jews. And he's disputing this concept because of his body of work.
Technically, if you want to get like semantic of the words, it's not entirely consumed by Jew hatred.
Yes, that was slightly hyperbolic, but only slightly.
I don't even. The reason it's accurate is because you said or Israel. First of all, I don't even care if people hate Jews or don't like Jews or like have cultural preferences. I don't give a crap. That's not even what it's about. It's about blaming everything on Israel and how you're obviously setting up thousands of young Ron Paul fans who trust this network to believe Jews control the world. And Bob Murphy knows that. He knows how they messed up.
Yes.
We've talked about it. So I don't know why he wants to be,
Bob wants to be Bob's like a lot of people.
He fucking problem.
I know. Bob's like a lot of people. He'd rather be popular than right, Austin. So it's like,
Bob's good at being fair, but like, say the thing. And he's a very pacifist. So that's probably why he doesn't want to, he can't go fully into realizing the solution. But
yeah, I agree. Yeah. His number one tactic is surrender, like a lot of libertarians. Austin, where can people read your work and find out more what you're doing online?
History 102, really great show. Elon's favorite show. You can watch that. And this is another thing that makes me really mad, right? Like, we know the importance of the Nazis being socialist as a propaganda linchpin. And instead, we play into the right's, straw man of the left straw man of the right. And then we don't want to argue that the Nazis were socialist or failed economically, because that will counter signal the audience that hates Jews, right, and hates Israel. So we're completely ceding those intellectual battles. And you have people who used to run like the Ron Paul bookstore talking about the Hitler's economic miracle. Okay, like what happened to Austrian economics? So all these intellectual things in the movement that are happening are a disaster, where we're ceding frames to Professor Jang, just so they can agree with us about Israel. It's a disaster.
You should write a Substack or something like that, Austin, so we can talk about it in a little bit more detail. Austin Padgett, you can follow him over on X as well. What's your handle on X? Ludwig Never Mises?
Ludwig Never Mises.
Ludwig Never Mises over on X. The number one show on X today, by the way, too. Thank you very much, Austin. You have a wonderful day. Appreciate your time.
Keep winning.
That's Austin Padgett. We are going to keep winning over here. We're going to give you a big fat white pill. All the other libertarian shows are going to give you a black pill. They're going to tell you things that are going to take you down a rabbit hole. Guess what? I'm not going to take you on any losing crusades. I'm not going to put you into something unless I think you're going to get something out of it, unless the liberty movement is going to get something out of it. I am not going to send you on any more crusades, tilting at windmills. I'm not going to join any more libertarian campaigns. They're going to tell you guys, we're going to win all these kinds of things. What I will do, if I give you anything, is I'm going to give you a simple framework to get from where you're at now to a slight improvement. A slight improvement. It's like karate. It's like martial arts. You're going to go through a little bit of pain, but after it's over, you're going to be slightly improved. And every time you come back, you're going to get a little bit better. Things are going to get a little bit better. That's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on self-improvement. We're going to improve ourselves. We're going to improve our bodies, our diets. We're going to build healthy families. We're going to work out. Right? We're going to get healthy diets. We're going to get off the drugs, libertarians. Get off the weed. Get off all these addictions. It's time to kick them all. The American people are only going to vote for us when we become better people, when we become better versions of ourselves. If we want to win for our ideals or our principles, it's not enough to talk about them. We have to be able to put them into action. And if you put things into action, you're going to realize that you're going to get punched in the face every once in a while. You're going to take a loss. You're going to have to compromise, which means you're going to have to give up something that you care about in order to get something else that you care about, because politics is not about getting everything that you want. It's about getting the second best of what you want and moving the ball down the field in the direction towards private property rights, towards limited government. And you know what? We're accomplishing that right here in the state of Missouri. We're about to abolish Missouri's income tax. So wins for liberty are possible. It can be done. Don't listen to the black pillars. Don't listen to the people who are going to take you on some quixotic quest to chase windmills in 2028, right? Don't do that to yourselves, guys. Stop committing suicide. Stop smoking weed. Stop jumping off of cliffs. Get into the gym. Get into the dojo. Eat healthy. Do something good for yourselves, because only when you do something good for yourself and take care of yourselves, can you look after your communities. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We're always grateful to have our friends and listeners here. Make sure you click the like button if you haven't already. Click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you be a regular guest on the show. When you click the follow button, you'll get a notification whenever we go live. Decision points. He says, I hate to be contrarian, but it's hard to be quiet when I'm seeing a good man like AP pushing this stuff. You should consider that I'm pushing this stuff because I'm a good man. Decision points. And that's that. Hope you enjoyed the overtime. We'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty Network. "'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.